Alrighty, hey everybody, today I am going to show you how to put an image plane of a reference into Maya so that you can animate using a reference video you've taken of yourself or a reference video that maybe you've found off the internet. This will be helpful so that you can actually time out your animation and figure out exactly what frame everything needs to happen on, all your keyframes, your extremes, your breakdowns. So for this, I'm going to be using Maya 2019, but this should work in most Mayas as far as I know. And I'm going to be using Premiere Pro. There are a few other options for this. Our main goal here is to convert a video file into a sequence of images, and then we will put them into Maya and move from there. So first thing you need to do is actually set up your scene. So as usual, we should go to File, Project Window, and create yourself a project. Okay, in this case, you'd click New. I'm just calling mine Image Plane Tutorial for now, but this is going to be for whatever project you're actually working on. This is the format I use, kind of this camel case thing, and then I like to put the date. So I've already created my project. If I go to File, Set Project, I need to make sure I'm setting to my Image Plane Tutorial or whatever project you're working on, because that's where we're going to be putting our actual files. If I open up a folder here and navigate into Maya, Projects, Image Plane Tutorial, we want to make sure everything's organized in here. So inside Source Images, I've created a new folder that I call Reference Footage, and this is where I'm going to store everything. Because there's going to be a whole sequence of images that we're going to use, so I don't really like having a whole bunch of loose images. But this is a good way to organize it, make sure it's in the right place, and you can easily attach it to the image plane. Okay, so now we need to jump over to Premiere Pro. So I've already imported a clip that I want to use. This is of my buddy Ronnie. You should go check him out on YouTube. Ronnie Street Stunts is what he goes by. And let's just suppose I wanted to use this clip for an animation. So it's just a short little clip here, okay? If you're brand new to Premiere Pro, all you have to do is, I'm in the editing mode, and I go up to File, Import, okay, find your video. This could be something you've taken on a phone. In this case, I got it off of YouTube, and you'll open that. I made sure when I downloaded this that this was in 1080p, and then I could just drag it over into our sequence to start. In some cases, you might have a video that's not the size you want, in which case you want to create this sequence. Okay, so you can always go up to File, New, Sequence, and then you can set up whatever settings you personally want to set up. So if you're doing this in 720p or 1080p, maybe you filmed it on a DSLR and realized that you've got it in 4K, but you only want to use 1080p. Since this is only for reference, you don't need this to be like super ultra high quality. 720 is plenty for what we're doing, but I have mine in 1080p. So if I just play through this real quick so you can kind of watch what this clip is. Now this one would be a little bit tricky because it has that moment of slow motion right here. But for the sake of this, let's just assume this is the clip that I want to use for my animation. Okay. So once I've got it trimmed up and set how I want, so remember you can always grab the ends of kind of the edges here and extend a clip so you've got more or less of it, because I imagine if you're filming something on your phone, you probably have moments you'd like to cut out where you're just starting the footage or finishing and walking to the camera to turn it off. So we've got it all cut, ready to go, okay? The next thing we do is export this. So if I come over here to File, Export, Media, okay, one quick note, I have to make sure that my blue line is selecting my actual sequence. Some people have clicked maybe up into this viewport before they're trying to export something, and the media may not even show up or be grayed out. So I'm going to click Export Media, and here is where we need to make sure we're setting it properly to get a JPEG sequence. So for format, I think default is usually AVI or something like that. We come down here to JPEG and presets. It should automatically go to a JPEG sequence because this is trying to give us a sequence of JPEGs. output name, I'm going to click on this blue name here, and this is where I'll navigate to Documents, Maya, Projects. In my case, I'm going to, oh, if I forgot what it's called, Image Plane Tutorial, and down to Source Images and my reference footage. Now, as you can see, I already did this so that I don't have to wait for this to export. So you'll see I named this Ronnie Flip Reference, and then it automatically will add the 000, 001, 002, etc., and give me the whole sequence breaking this down. Okay. One thing to kind of watch for, I have my output here set to 24 frames per second. If you're downloading stuff from YouTube, you may get something that's in 30 frames per second, which probably won't be a huge issue if you're just kind of generally using it for reference. But if you are doing things like lip sync and dialogue, making sure, because we animate in 24 frames per second most of the time, you want to keep the 24 frames per second in both places. Okay, so I'm just going to hit cancel, but you would normally hit export over here to get this all exported. And then we can jump back into Maya. Okay, so there are a couple ways to bring in an image plane. I personally like to just attach it to one of my orthographic views. You don't want to just put it into the perspective view, or it kind of does some weird things. You want it attached to a more specific camera. So if I look at my outliner, you can see that I have these cameras kind of representing my different spaces that I'm viewing. So we have our perspective to tumble around in and see the 3D view, and then our orthographic top, front, and side views. So let's just suppose I wanted in my front view. If I had a scene here where I had a character, you know, maybe they're on a couch, or, well, why would they be on a couch if they're doing a backflip? But if I had the scene set up where I have, you know, the walls and the little board where they're going to run up and do their flip, I probably would have a better idea of which view is going to be most useful to me. And if none of these are particularly useful, you can just create a camera and attach the image plane to any camera in any kind of position. But I'm going to put it in my front view. So to do this, I go to View, down here to Image Plane, and Import Image. Now, you would think, in this case, importing a movie would work. You can get a reference movie and use import movie. I have found it to be clunkier, and it's more specific as to exactly like what file type that has to be. So personally, I've found this to just work smoother and more efficient. So I'm going to say import image. It's going to take me, because I set my project right into the correct folder structure. So I can hop into reference footage. I'm just going to pick the very first one and open it. Okay, you'll see this brought this in, so now I can view this. Okay, I've got W selected, so I can move this around. Okay, if this is a little bit inconvenient for my spacing, so I can see my rig, I can decide where this is going to be most effective. But let's hop into this view. You'll notice if I scrub through my timeline, nothing's happening. Okay, now I've set my timeline to 101 at the start point. This is where I've been taught to start my animations, just because this gives you a little bit of freedom. If you take it to a director and or your art director, and they say, oh, the animation needs to start earlier or add some anticipation before it gets into an action, then you're not going into negative frames. You could just jump back to 90 or 80 or whatever. I see some people start at 100 and kind of work more even numbers. So kind of just preference here. So I'm starting at 101. I've got this all set with my image plane selected, so it's highlighted in green like this. I'm in my attribute editor, and now I come down to here where it says image name, and I've got the file, and I can just select use image sequence. Okay, so by selecting this, you'll see if I kind of scrub through here, I now can see this play through. But you'll notice this isn't playing the whole clip. I'm only getting the end of the clip. And that's because by default, using an image plane is going to start this at the very beginning, at frame 1, essentially. So I have to use my frame offset so that I can see the whole thing. And this is going to sound a little counterintuitive here, because I'm not going to set it to start on frame 101. I'm basically saying I'm going to start this at, so I'm offsetting it by -100, Okay, hit tab there. And now you'll see this brings me to the beginning of the clip by pushing it kind of to this starting point. So now as I scrub through here, I can very easily watch what's going on. Okay, and this is a great way to start timing out my keyframes. You want to make sure you're doing all your planning as early as possible. You probably already should have done some of the keyframes, some thumbnail sketches, figure out exactly what this should look like, but at least I can come through here and say, okay, well, 101, our start keyframe, okay, maybe the planted feet, okay, 104 might be a keyframe, 109 I might set, okay, another one, 115, and then it's really just deciding what points, you know, kind of got extremes here and there, are going to be telling this story. So keyframes should be finding your actual story moments. In this case, my 148 is not long enough, so let's just bump this up. Oh, not 2000. Okay, and now I can watch this whole thing. So this is super useful so you can actually see as you're posing out your model. If you're on frame 134, you know, with your character and you decide that's a keyframe for whatever reason, you can just look exactly at the pose and then get your character into a similar position. Of course, you don't want to copy reference footage exactly. It's better to try to find ways to push it, exaggeration in there. Naturally, people may not behave with the 12 principles of animation. They might not include as much anticipation as could be necessary, or move in arcs that look as nice. So change things up. You don't want to completely rely on this, but this is a great way to actually see what you're doing, have the footage in here, and kind of move from that point forward. Okay, that's everything I've got for you on importing this image plane. Just so you do know, there are other tools besides Premiere Pro for getting things into a JPEG sequence. I believe the paid version of QuickTime is another option for this. But if you do a quick internet search, you will find some other ways that you can create these image sequences if you don't have Premiere Pro available to you. Cool. See you later.